So I want to talk about CM Punk coming back to AEW. This has been a story that's been out there for a few weeks. I actually found out about this before even WrestleMania happened. I tweeted about it like the day after WrestleMania because I said I wasn't going to talk about it because I had found out like right before April 1st. And I didn't want to say it on April 1st because everyone would think I was lying about it. But CM Punk is prepared to come back now to AEW. I'm sure by now you guys all know the news websites have reported that the Saturday AEW show is supposed to be kind of his show, and there's talk of him doing a brand split. I want to discuss my thoughts on CM Punk coming back. So, first of all, I want to say this about CM Punk. CM Punk, when he first came into AEW back in 2021, elevated that company both in pay-per-view buy rates and viewership. So no matter what your opinion may be or on what side of the fence you fall on when it comes to this story, like no matter whose side you're on, whether it be the Elite or Punk, one thing I want to always remind you of is I always say this too in a lot of my videos because we weren't there and we're not the lawyers involved, we don't know detail by detail exactly what happened. There's been some reports about what happened, but maybe if any of us were in the room, we'd have a different perspective on it. So I understand some people love Kenny Omega and the Bucks, and I understand some people love CM Punk. I get it. So just understand that move your opinions aside about which wrestler you like more and look at the situation at hand. CM Punk spoke up during a press conference back in AEW All Out 2021, Brawl Out, as they say. No, 2022. Sorry, 2022. And that's what began, the beginning of the end, as they say. Then, of course, there was a big backstage altercation where fists were thrown, men were bitten, dogs were endangered, whatever. He's been gone for a while due to injury. I want to say this about CM Punk. Yes, Punk has led to a bunch of new fans discovering AEW. However, do I think that Punk is the right guy at this moment? I think when Punk got hurt last year and he was out for most of the summer, I honestly did not miss him. I thought Jon Moxley did a great job carrying that torch. To me, I actually missed MJF more than Punk. I really did. Now, I'm not saying that to say I dislike CM Punk. It's just I don't think that the wrestling business necessarily really needs him. I know some people who love Punk who think otherwise, but I enjoyed Punk back, 10, 12 years ago, even further back when he was on the Indies. I was always a follower of his. I even met the guy in 2004 at an indie show in front of like 20 people. And I met him again in 2008 when he was World Heavyweight Champion. So I've never had an issue with the guy. Obviously, the dude is a super confident guy. Some would say he's egotistical, but of course, there's always two ways to look at things. And he knows his worth. But for me, I didn't miss him. Now, here's the reason why I want to talk about this. There's a difference between personal and professional. And you have to understand that ultimately, when you really look at this, when you really examine this story objectively, you come to understand that the real person that's responsible for this is Tony Khan and the lack of leadership in AEW. That's only because of a couple reasons. One, Tony Khan let Punk go off on his rant, didn't say anything, didn't even, hush him or whisper to stop or nothing. Tony Khan allowed the behind the scenes build up to fester between Hangman Page and Punk. And some have actually blamed Hangman Page, for this. And I understand why. And then you have fans, of course, picking their side. You've got the EVPs. You've got Punk, their top guy at the time. Tony Khan's the reason why this whole thing happened. Back in 97 is very similar where you had Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels who had an on-screen rivalry that bled into a behind-the-scenes rivalry starting in 96, really, is where it started. 97 is where it became an on-screen storyline again, including times where in 97 there was an incident in the summer where Shawn and Bret got into a fist fight, literally a fight in the backstage area. Vince tried his best to get them to resolve it, but when you're talking about guys at the top of their game, they got egos, they hate each other, it is not that easy. So I don't totally think that Khan is like, I'm not going to sit here and put all the blame on Khan, but I think he's primarily responsible because it's his company, and part of being the boss is being able to check these egos at the door and being able to be a leader. Understand? I think that CM Punk coming back is, while I'm not the biggest Punk fan now, and I don't think he's the most valuable player in that company as far as my own personal entertainment goes, I do see his value. I do think that a CM Punk and FTR feud with the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega is dollar signs. I think that if they, and I've said this before, if they headline All In Wembley with CM Punk versus Kenny Omega, that's the best chance they got at really, capturing the large attendance that they want. You understand what I'm saying? And you could have this feud go on and on and on. It doesn't have to just be one match, but I do feel like that's the match that we know will draw eyeballs and maybe even have more than just a few fly-ins from the US and other parts of the world to go see that match. So I think that there's more value in a CM Punk versus the Elite feud than not. A lot of wrestling fans view this very emotionally. I've seen a lot of fans, even my own friends, who are like, "Oh God, well, we don't want Punk in our locker room. We don't want him. He's a shit stirrer, whatever." I get it, but for what is best for business, ultimately, folks, AEW has not turned a profit yet. The Khans are billionaires. They make tons of money every year from their football teams and things of that nature, the bumper company, but AEW as a subsidiary has not turned a profit yet. So Tony Khan's goal, whether misplaced or not by him, which is a whole different topic, should be to eventually get AEW to be a profitable company. Now, he's got enough money now that AEW can exist as a tax write-off for many, many, many years. But the goal is to eventually make money. As a businessman, as somebody who's competitive, you never want to have a company losing money, because that's just your own money being lost. Yes, they have more money than they can even count, right? We know that, but it's still like it's a certain degree of accomplishment to get your brand to make money, to have another stream of income. So I feel like he needs to start focusing on what the biggest matches can be and what is going to draw. And I feel like the All In card wouldn't have even been booked. I don't think they would have even booked Wembley if he didn't already have this match in mind. So I think that actually what's really going on is, I think that behind the scenes, the EVPs and Tony Khan have discussed this. I think that Khan and Punk have discussed it, but I think they've all agreed to kind of keep this a bit of a secret because they don't want it getting out. And, obviously Punk was behind the scenes at Raw this past Monday, and there's a lot of people who question the motives behind that. I get it. But for the AEW story, for AEW to have a story that's going to draw them instant money, I think that's it. I think you'll have the Punk fans come back. I think you're going to have dueling chants. You'll have the fans fighting with each other, but that's better, verbally, not physically, hopefully. But that's better than having the boys in the back fight. And really, something needs to happen now so that going forward, there's more communication. The thing with this business and in life, and this is not a speakdom, but in life, dude, communication is key. And I think that the better communicator you are and the more you're willing to shut up and listen to the other side, the better you can get problems resolved. And whatever issues they had, I do think that Punk ambushed TK in that press conference, and TK just had no idea what to do. But that can never happen again. Unless you're working, unless it's the work, it can never happen again. Because that really caused problems. And for a while, people thought it was a work. And I think they might do it more like a work now, but you never want your talent to embarrass the company. And the reality is that no matter what side you're on, the company was embarrassed because of that whole thing. It made TK and AEW look bad. So they really have to hammer out their differences, because I do think that feud can really, really elevate AEW, because they've been in a bit of a slump, lately. It needs to put them back into position, and it needs to really not only give them momentum, but hopefully Tony Khan can earn the respect back of the fans and of the locker room. And that's what needs to happen. This past Wednesday's Dynamite was a pretty well-booked show. A couple things I didn't like, but most of the show was pretty fun, well-booked. I like what they did with the MJF thing. So he is seemingly improving. I'm going to chalk it up and just say that something was going on with the guy for the, most of last year. Maybe, he was caught up in other things. I don't know. But he does have some off weeks. He does have some on weeks. Nevertheless, I feel like this is a big coup for them if they do get CM Punk back. So as a wrestling fan, I want to tell other wrestling fans, don't get your panties in a wad. Yeah, they got into a fight, but really, both sides acted childishly. Did Punk swing first? Yes. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe one side didn't act childishly, but that shouldn't matter because as people, we need to move past our disagreements. If you and somebody else get into a fight, does that mean you have to hate them forever? I don't believe that. I don't believe that. So that's the way I'm looking at this. I just want the product to be better, but I don't think Punk is a long-term answer. I think Punk's role should be to put over whoever the next big star is. MJF was the plan, and they're probably going to go back to the Punk MJF feud because that was the best thing that Punk did in the company when he was there. But now that MJF's already world champion, who's going to be the next guy that Punk can put over? Could it be a Ricky Starks? Could it be a Jungle Boy? Could it be Powerhouse Hobbs, who we already had a match with? Lots of different, nominees. But ultimately, Punk's job should be to give back, not necessarily by wrestling these guys in 50-50 matches, but by actually putting somebody over. Anyways, what do you think? Let me know. We'll talk soon. Take care.